So what if the feelings of deep anxiety, that like crushing visceral grief and the profound isolation you might be experiencing right now aren't actually symptoms of a broken mind?
Right.
What if they are, the exact prerequisites for a spiritual awakening?
I mean, it completely flips the script on how we view psychological discomfort, doesn't
It
it?
really
We
does.
spend so much time and energy just trying to medicate or meditate our way out of pain. We just assume that a well-adjusted life is, well, a comfortable one.
Yeah.
But some of the oldest wisdom traditions argue that comfort is actually the enemy of realization.
Exactly. And that paradigm shift is exactly what we're exploring with you today. Welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to kind of map out the anatomy of a spiritual crisis, and we're using a truly arresting piece of source material to do it.
We are.
Yeah, we're looking at page 794 of the texts we've gathered, which features a composition by Shaykh Fareedh. But before we jump into the deep end here, let's establish a little context for you. Who exactly is Shaykh Fareedh, and what's the framework of this specific text?
Well, Sheikh Fareed was this highly revered 12th and 13th century Sufi mystic and poet.
Okay.
And his work is so foundational that it was actually incorporated into the central scripture of Sikhism, the Siri Guru Granth Sahib.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. And this particular composition we're looking at is set to Raag Soohee. Now, a Raag isn't just, a musical scale or a simple tune.
Right, it's more complex than that.
Much more. It is a highly specific melodic framework in Indian classical music that's actually designed to physically and psychologically evoke a certain mood.
So what mood does Raag Soohee evoke?
It's specifically associated with deep, intense devotion, the kind of love that literally aches. It's meant to stir up this feeling of profound, almost unbearable longing.
Unbearable longing. Okay, so we aren't just reading a dry theological textbook here.
Not at all.
We are stepping into an intentional, engineered emotional landscape. And the text, it wastes zero time. It drops us right into the climax of a breakdown.
It really does.
The narrator says, burning and burning, writhing in pain, I wring my hands. I have gone insane, seeking my husband Lord.
Yeah, it's so visceral.
Right. And the core metaphor here is the soul bride. So that's the human soul envisioned as a woman desperately aching for her divine husband. And I actually have a theory about why this specific metaphor is used across, so many different spiritual traditions.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
So if the text talked about a creator and a creation, or like a master and a servant, that immediately places the relationship in the realm of intellect and hierarchy.
Like a power dynamic.
Exactly. It's a power dynamic.
Yeah.
But framing it as a marriage, it bypasses the intellect entirely and goes straight into our mammalian attachment system.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Right, because we all neurologically understand the terror of losing an intimate partner. By calling God the husband Lord, it translates this abstract cosmic separation into the most acute, relatable human heartbreak possible.
That is a brilliant way to look at it, honestly. It maps spiritual alienation directly onto our biology.
Yeah.
Because when a human being experiences the sudden loss of a primary attachment figure, the nervous system just goes into overdrive.
Totally.
So the writhing and pain and the feeling of going insane, those are highly accurate descriptions of neurochemical withdrawal.
Wow. Yeah.
The text is establishing early on that spiritual separation isn't this passive state of, just not knowing God. It is an active, agonizing rupture.
An active rupture. And what really fascinates me is how the soul bride processes this rupture. Because when a normal relationship falls apart, the human instinct, like our ego's primary defense mechanism, is to point fingers.
Oh, always. We want to blame the other person.
We want to find a reason why they failed us. And the soul bride even starts to go there. She says, "Oh, my husband, Lord, you are angry with me in your mind." But then the pivot happens.
Yeah, that crucial pivot.
It's the fulcrum of the entire opening section. She says, "The fault is with me and not with my husband, Lord."
And right there, that is the collapse of the ego's defense system.
Yes. But let's break down why that collapse is necessary. Because I think, in a worldly sense, taking 100% of the blame often feels like victimization.
Sure, it can feel like you're just putting yourself down.
Right. But here, it's portrayed as empowerment. Why does absolute accountability trigger spiritual maturity?
Because as long as you are blaming an external force, even God, you are preserving your ego.
Ah, I see.
You're maintaining this narrative where you are a separate, righteous entity that has somehow been wronged.
You're the victim of the universe.
Exactly. But by saying, the fault is with me, You shatter that false narrative. You realize that your isolation is not some punishment handed down by a cruel universe. It's the natural causal result of your own ignorance and your own choices.
It's the realization that you built the very walls that are keeping you imprisoned.
Right, and you can't dismantle the walls until you admit you are the architect.
Man, that brings up a terrifying realization, though.
Yeah.
If I built the walls, I've spent my entire life doing it. I've wasted all this time. And the text actually builds a structural speed bump to force the reader to confront that exact terror. There's a marker in the original text called the rarau, which translates to pause.
Let's pause, yes.
And the line right before you are instructed to pause is just devastating. She says, "Oh, my Lord and Master, I do not know your excellence and worth. Having wasted my youth, now I come to regret and repent." And then pause.
Let's really look at the psychological mechanics of that pause, because it's brilliant. The human mind uses the future as an escape hatch.
What do you mean?
Well, when the present gets too uncomfortable, we project our awareness forward, right? We tell ourselves we'll fix things tomorrow or, next year.
Oh, definitely. I'll start meditating on Monday.
Exactly. But by bringing up the concept of a wasted youth and then forcing a pause, the text literally seals off the escape hatch. It traps the reader in the unalterable reality of the past.
It forces you to grieve the finality of lost time. I mean, it's like realizing you've taken a profound, lifelong relationship totally for granted and only waking up to their immense value when they are, like, literally packing their bags to leave.
Yeah, that sheer panic.
That frantic hand-wringing.
It does, because you cannot get those years back. You spent your energy on fleeting worldly illusions, treating the divine as a total afterthought.
Right.
And the realization of that incredible miscalculation, it creates this huge vacuum of regret. The pause requires you to just sit in that vacuum until it fundamentally changes you.
But a human mind can only sit in a vacuum of internal agony for so long before the pressure becomes too great.
Oh, yeah.
Something has to give.
When internal processing fails, the mind has to externalize the pain. And I think that transitions us into what is probably the most visually striking part of the poem.
The bird.
Yes. The soul bride looks outward into the natural world, and she projects her grief onto a black coal bird. She asks it, "Oh, blackbird, what qualities have made you black?" And the bird's response reveals the hidden architecture of the universe, at least from the soul bride's perspective. The bird simply says, "I have been burnt by separation from my beloved."
Okay, I want to push back on this imagery for a second, or at least try to unpack the necessity of it.
Sure.
Because we are bombarded today with a version of wellness and spirituality that is highly, sanitized.
Oh, very much so.
Good vibes only. Right. It's all about deep breaths, finding your center, cultivating this serene, unbothered state. But this text uses a really violent, destructive metaphor. Being burnt?
Yes.
If the ultimate goal is peace and unity, why must the mechanism of getting there involve being incinerated by grief?
Well, to understand the necessity of the fire, we really have to understand the density of the material being burned.
Okay.
The ego isn't just a bad habit, It is a highly sophisticated survival mechanism that's been built over a lifetime.
Or lifetimes, depending on the tradition.
Exactly. It's composed of all your attachments, your desires, your traumas, and this deeply entrenched sense of I. You cannot simply breathe away something that dense.
It's like trying to dissolve a diamond in a glass of water.
Yeah.
It requires a much harsher solvent.
That's a perfect way to conceptualize it. In the alchemy of spiritual awakening, the fire of separation is literally the only solvent strong enough to break down the ego's molecular structure.
Wow.
The pain isn't arbitrary. It serves a specific function. Extreme longing consumes the false identities and the worldly desires because suddenly none of those things matter anymore.
Right, when you are starving for air, you don't care what kind of shoes you're wearing.
Precisely. The burning strips the soul down to its absolute naked essence, which is the only state in which it can actually connect with the divine.
Which makes perfect sense of the next assertion in the text. It states this as an absolute law of physics. Without her husband, Lord, how can the soul bride ever find peace?
She can't.
No amount of worldly distraction, money, status, shallow relationships, none of it can put out a fire that is burning on a spiritual frequency. But then we are introduced to a crucial variable, which is grace.
Yes, the turning point.
The text says, when he becomes merciful, then God unites us with himself.
The mechanics here is so vital to understand. The burning prepares the vessel, right? But it does not guarantee the union.
You can't earn it.
Exactly. The ego cannot force its way into heaven through sheer effort or even sheer suffering.
Right, like, look how much I'm hurting, give me enlightenment.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. The realization of our own smallness culminates in the understanding that the final connection relies entirely on divine mercy. We clear the runway, but we don't control the weather.
We don't control the weather. Man, that is a deeply vulnerable place to be.
Very.
Because you've basically burned down your entire worldly identity, but the divine hasn't reached out yet. You are suspended in the void. And the imagery the poem uses for this liminal space is incredibly stark. Yeah, it describes the soul bride in the pit of the world. It says she suffers there, lonely, with no companions and no friends. And honestly, I feel like this spatial metaphor of the pit maps perfectly onto the modern loneliness epidemic.
Oh, without a doubt. Let's expand on that connection for you. What is it that makes a pit so dangerous?
Well, it's enclosed, it's dark, but most importantly, gravity is working against you.
Right.
You cannot leverage your own weight to get out. You need someone on the outside to throw down a rope. And in a modern context, you can be sitting in a crowded subway or managing a social media profile with millions of interactions and still be at the absolute bottom of that pit.
Because it's a spiritual pit, not a physical one.
Right. We have engineered a society that provides endless connectivity, but almost zero actual communion.
And that's the tragedy. Because worldly companions cannot reach you in a spiritual pit. They are operating on a horizontal plane while your crisis is completely vertical.
Wow. Yeah. Vertical crisis.
In fact, relying on worldly friends to solve a spiritual crisis often just digs the pit deeper.
Because they give you worldly advice.
Exactly. Their advice will always center on repairing the ego, getting revenge, finding a distraction, bolstering your self-esteem. None of that helps you transcend it.
So what is the rope then? Because the poem doesn't leave her suffocating in the dark forever. There is an intervention.
Yes.
The text says, in his mercy, God has united me with the Sadh Sangat, the company of the holy. So this introduces the concept of community as a lifeline. But I want to really dig into how this works in practice, because it's not magic.
No, it's highly practical.
How does being around holy company actually pull someone out of a psychological and spiritual pit? Is it like a form of nervous system co-regulation?
Co-regulation is a highly accurate psychological lens for this, actually. Think about it. When you are isolated in the pit, your ego creates this distorted reality field fueled entirely by panic.
You're just spinning out.
You are caught in an echo chamber of your own inadequacies. But when you are placed into the Sadh Sangat, a community of individuals who are genuinely grounded in spiritual truth, their collective presence acts as a grounding wire.
They aren't panicked.
They aren't panicked. They don't validate the ego's distortions.
So they act as a mirror that reflects reality rather than like the funhouse mirror of the ego.
That's a great way to put it. And look at the immediate effect of that clear reflection in the text. She says, and when I look again, then I find God as my helper. Notice the sequence there. The Satsangat didn't hand God to her like some physical object. The community simply stabilized her vision.
They calmed her down enough to see clearly.
Right. Once the panic and the ego's distortions were cleared away, she realized the divine presence was actually there the entire time, sustaining her even in the dark.
She just couldn't see it through the smoke of her own burning.
Exactly.
Okay, so she is out of the pit. Her vision is clear. She has her community. A typical narrative would just roll the credits right here.
Happily ever after.
Yeah, happily ever after. But this is where the text takes a radically sobering turn. It shifts from the internal realization to the external application. The path forward is revealed, and it is daunting.
It really strips away any lingering romantic illusions about what a sustained spiritual practice actually looks like.
Yeah.
Because waking up is one thing. Staying awake while walking through the world is entirely different.
The description of this path is intense. Shaykh Fareedh writes, "The path upon which I must walk is very depressing. It is sharper than a two-edged sword and very narrow. That is where my path lies."
It's heavy.
I have to be honest, the word depressing really threw me off at first.
I can see why.
If this is the ultimate truth, why is it depressing? But, thinking about the mechanisms we've discussed, I don't think it means it makes the soul sad. I think it means it literally depresses the worldly mind. It starves the dopamine receptors.
That is the exact mechanism at play. The worldly mind, the ego, survives on constant spikes of gratification, right?
Validation, pleasure, comfort.
All of it. A path that is why allows you to wander, to seek out those little dopamine hits while still vaguely moving forward.
Right.
But a path that is sharper than a two-edged sword offers zero room for wandering. It offers no worldly gratification whatsoever. It starves the ego completely.
Let's talk about the physics of walking on a sword, too. It requires absolute hyper-vigilant presence.
Yes.
If you lean too far into the past, into your regrets, you fall and get cut. If you lean too far into the future, into your anxieties about where the path leads, you fall and get cut.
There's no buffer zone.
The sword forces you into the absolute present moment. You have to be entirely focused on the millimeter of steel beneath your foot.
And that level of continuous, razor-sharp mindfulness is terrifying to the average mind. There is no room for baggage on a tightrope.
No baggage at all.
You have to drop your resentments, your pride, even your intellectual concepts of who you think God actually is. The path forces a continuous shedding of weight.
Which brings a crushing weight to the final command of the poem. Shaykh Fareedh actually pivots here and speaks directly to himself, which obviously serves as a plea to the reader.
Right.
He says, "Oh, Shaykh Fareedh, think of that path early on." And the urgency here loops us all the way back to the Raag, the pause where the soul bride wept over her wasted youth.
The urgency is the logical conclusion of everything we've just analyzed. If the path requires the balance of a gymnast and the focus of a surgeon, you cannot wait until your spiritual muscles have completely atrophied to begin training.
Yeah.
If you spend your youth, and youth here isn't just biological age.
Like it's any time you still have agency.
Exactly, the period where you have agency and energy. If you spend that time indulging the ego and wandering the wide roads, you are actively disabling yourself for the real journey.
Because eventually, the wide road ends for all of us.
It always does.
Tragedy strikes and illness hits, or simply the reality of your own mortality comes into sharp focus and you are violently forced onto that narrow edge.
And if you haven't cultivated the balance before that happens, if you haven't found your sadh sangat to help steady you, the transition won't just be difficult.
It'll be impossible.
It'll be a crisis of the highest magnitude. You will be right back to the beginning of the poem, writhing in pain, completely unequipped for the reality of the crossing.
Wow. So we've mapped out this really extraordinary psychological and spiritual architecture for you today. We started with the sheer terror of absolute accountability, right?
Yeah.
Understanding that realizing the fault is with me is the first necessary collapse of the ego.
The first step.
We looked at the painful but necessary alchemy of the fire of separation, where the coal bird showed us how profound longing acts as a solvent, just burning away those false identities.
Burning it all down.
Yeah. We examined the mechanics of the pit of the world and how true community, the sadh sangat, acts not as a savior, but as a stabilizing mirror that clears our vision. And finally, we confronted the razor's edge, the daily, relentless demand for absolute presence and the shedding of all worldly baggage.
It is an incredibly comprehensive blueprint for waking up. It doesn't promise a comfortable journey, but it promises an authentic one.
An authentic one, yeah. But as we close this deep dive, there is one final piece of the puzzle I really want to leave you with. Something to mull over that complicates this ancient wisdom for us today.
Let's hear it.
We've talked extensively about the fire of separation, that agonizing withdrawal from the divine that serves as the catalyst for the entire journey. It forces the soul bride to seek a cure.
Right, the pain is the motivator.
But consider the environment we live in right now. We exist in an era of unprecedented algorithmic distraction. Whenever we feel the slightest twinge of loneliness or boredom or just that existential ache, we immediately reach into our pockets to numb it.
Oh, absolutely. A screen, a notification.
An endless stream of content. So my question for you is this. Is our modern technology acting as an anesthetic that prevents us from ever feeling the fire of separation in the first place?
That is a terrifying thought.
And if we successfully numb the pain of the symptom, are we permanently destroying our only motivation to seek the cure?
Wow.
It's a heavy question, I know. But it's one you have the power to answer in how you choose to spend your attention today. Thank you so much for stepping into the deep end with us, and we will catch you on the next one.